This month's AI breakthroughs have been remarkable, with OpenAI releasing GPT 4.5, while DeepSeek's upcoming R2 promises efficiency levels that could leave OpenAI struggling to keep up. Meanwhile, Tesla Optimus, Unitree, and Figure's latest humanoid robots are blurring the line between machine and life, sparking shock across the internet. xAI has just unveiled Grok 3, rumored to be the most powerful AI yet, and China's relentless push with Tülü 3 and ByteDance's new model is making waves in ways no one expected. And if that wasn't enough, the rise of AI humanoid soldiers is raising serious questions about where this technology is headed. The AI race is accelerating, and we're witnessing its most intense phase yet. One more thing before we dive in. I know many of you have been asking how to create an AI avatar like this. Well, I've got something for you. We just launched AI Content Lab, a school community where you'll learn how to build ultra-realistic AI avatars and influencers, automate video creation, and monetize AI-generated content. And this is just the beginning. Every month, we're adding new courses, tutorials, and strategies to keep you at the cutting edge of AI-powered content. No complicated setups, no prior experience needed, just plug into the future of AI content creation. If that sounds like something you'd want to be part of, check out the link in the description and join us inside AI Content Lab. Now, let's jump back into this month's biggest AI breakthroughs. China just dropped a bombshell in robotics. Humanoid robots dancing at the Spring Festival Gala, perfectly in sync with human performers. Meanwhile, Figure AI just walked away from OpenAI to build its own in-house AI. Tesla's Optimus is facing a new challenger in the robot hand game, and NVIDIA is training humanoids to move like pro athletes. The race for the most advanced AI-powered humanoid is heating up fast, and things are getting intense. Let's break it all down. First up, let's chat about China's Spring Festival Gala, where a group of 16 humanoid robots from a company called Unitree took the stage. They performed this traditional Yangko dance alongside 16 human dancers, tossing and catching handkerchiefs, spinning around in sync, and not missing a beat. The crazy part is that most humanoid robots out there struggle to stay balanced if you just give them a little shove. But these H-Hun robots, they were not only dancing, but also flipping handkerchiefs in the air and catching them again, all while maintaining stability. That is no small feat. Now, people are comparing them to Tesla's Optimus robot. If you remember, Optimus had some pretty shaky demos when it came to walking in a straight line or picking things up. The Unitree H-Hand stands about 1.8 meters tall, around 5'11", and weighs 47 kilograms, that's about 104 pounds. They spent 3 months training with AI using laser slam for positioning. This helped them handle stage nuances like little gaps in the floor and the rapid changing of dance formations. These robots were officially rolled out in August 2023, even making an appearance at NVIDIA's GTC conference in 2024. Each H1 robot sells for roughly 650,000 yuan, that's about 90,000 US dollars. Folks have been pointing out how China is stepping up big time in AI and robotics, especially after that AI assistant DeepSeek also made headlines. India, for instance, is keeping a close watch on DeepSeek's activities, worried about data security. And Elon Musk? He gave his own not-so-flattering opinion on DeepSeek, implying he wasn't super impressed. But here's the kicker. While the spotlight is on China's new AI and robotics achievements, other companies around the globe are making big moves too, like Figure AI. They're the team building that commercial and residential humanoid robot called Figure 2. They raised around $675 million last year, boosting their valuation to $2.6 billion, and so far, they've raised a total of $1.5 billion. The big shock is that Figure just announced on X, formerly Twitter, that they're ditching their deal with OpenAI. Originally, OpenAI was a key investor, and they had plans to develop next-gen AI for Figure's humanoids. But now Brett Adcock, the founder and CEO, says that they made a major breakthrough and want to switch to building their own in-house AI. According to him, you can't just outsource the type of embodied AI you need to run a robot in real time. That's part of the reason they're going all in on an end-to-end system. Interestingly, OpenAI is also backing another humanoid robot startup in Norway called 1X. And on top of that, OpenAI just filed a new trademark application that references humanoid robots that can learn, communicate, and even entertain people. So it looks like they're not giving up on robotic hardware projects themselves. Meanwhile, Figure's new approach might be focusing on factory uses first. BMW, for instance, began trying out Figure robots in a South Carolina factory, which is a pretty big test site. If successful, that could be huge for large-scale industrial deployment. Brett Adcock is also hinting at unveiling something no one has ever seen on a humanoid in the next 30 days. So yeah, definitely a lot of hype going on there. Now, in other robot news, Elon Musk jumped on X to talk about how intricate Tesla's Optimus hand is, calling it more complex than a Fabergé egg. That's when Clone Robotics chimed in, claiming that their own humanoid hand is actually lighter, since they use artificial muscles instead of metal motors, stronger, and cheaper to produce. They even joked that it's soft enough to give comfy massages and hugs. So there's definitely a rivalry brewing in terms of who can build the best robot hand. Clone basically said their muscle-based approach beats Tesla's motor-based design any day. Fewer parts, less weight, more strength. It's a bold statement, but we'll have to see how that plays out in real-world testing. Meanwhile, there's yet another big development in humanoid robotics, this time from NVIDIA and Carnegie Mellon University. They're working on a new training framework called ASAP, which stands for Aligning Simulation and Real-World Physics for Learning Agile Humanoid Whole Body Skills. The researchers basically want humanoid robots to mimic top athletes, so they fed their system videos of big sports stars like Cristiano Ronaldo, LeBron James doing his silencer celebration, and Kobe Bryant's legendary fadeaway shot. They even taught the bot some dance moves inspired by K-pop star Rose. A tool called Tram converted these normal videos into three-dimensional motion data. After that, the robots learned in simulation first through something called reinforcement learning, and then the team refined them to handle real-life physics. One interesting challenge is the so-called real to sim to real gap. Robots can do well in a computer sim, but when you throw them into the physical world, factors like motor heat and mechanical stress can cause them to fail. So the ASAP framework involves the robots practicing in a simulator, collecting data from real-world attempts, even if those attempts are messy, and then adjusting the simulation to match what actually happened. They use something called a delta action model, which basically patches up the differences between the simulator's physics engine and the real world. That way, the next time the robot tries that jump shot or that dance spin, the simulation is more accurate, and the robot's moves become smoother and more lifelike. The big takeaway is that robots could be a lot more agile and expressive if we can handle all the physics quirks that show up when metal or muscle-based actuators, if you're clone robotics, meets real-world friction, gravity, and torque limitations. The study also pointed out that these advanced movements can be brutal on hardware. Overheating motors and stressed out metal or plastic pieces lead to frequent breakdowns. 2G line robots were damaged during the tests. The researchers also said that future approaches might integrate damage-aware policies that adjust on the fly to keep the robot from blowing a motor. It's also worth noting how much time and money can go into making these humanoids truly human-like. Unitree's H1 is priced around $90,000, while Figure is sinking billions of dollars into their broad vision. Elon's Tesla is doing the same, funneling loads of resources to develop Optimus. Some companies are focusing on commercial tasks first, like factory work or warehouse jobs, because businesses have a higher willingness and budget to pay for these futuristic helpers. Others, like 1X, are already pushing toward making robots useful in the home, which is a whole other challenge because you're dealing with everyday random tasks, kids running around, or pets underfoot. So basically, China is pushing AI and robotics hard. Unitree's dancing humanoids are wowing everyone, and shorter training times mean these robots are improving fast. Meanwhile, Figure AI split from OpenAI so they can control every aspect of their humanoids' hardware and software. We've also got that friendly rivalry over robot hands, Musk's motor-based design vs. Clone Robotics' muscle-powered approach. On top of that, NVIDIA and CMU are teaching humanoids to move like pro athletes using their ASAP framework, which bridges simulation and real-world practice. All this competition is great for speeding up advances in humanoid AI. Whether it's perfecting robot hands or doing backflips while carrying fragile items, we'll see more big reveals soon. Figure's secret project, Tesla's next Optimus update, or whatever NVIDIA and CMU come up with next. In a shocking turn of events, a new player has just taken the lead in what we're calling AI World War I. AI2's latest model, Tülü 4.5b, has come out of nowhere and outperformed both controversial DeepSeek's model and OpenAI's O1 on several major benchmarks. The AI wars began when DeepSeek, a Chinese startup, released a model that could match or even surpass OpenAI's strongest offerings for free, sparking a fierce rivalry. Then, Alibaba got in on the action with their Qwen 2.5 model, upping the ante even further. To make things more intense, Microsoft and OpenAI accused DeepSeek of stealing their tech, adding more drama to the war. But now, with Tülü 4.5b on the scene, it's clear the stakes have been raised and the competition is more heated than ever. This is getting really interesting, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. So here's the rundown. AI2, short for the Allen Institute for AI, based in Seattle, is a non-profit research organization. They're famous for doing cutting-edge stuff in NLP and other AI research areas. This time they're stepping into the spotlight by releasing Tülü 4.5b. The name 405b literally points to the insane scale of parameters the model uses. Bigger models often show better reasoning abilities, or so we've seen historically. And Tülü 4.5b definitely follows that trend. It was apparently trained using 256 GPUs in parallel, which shows how big this project was in terms of compute resources. Now, Tülü 4.5b is special not just because it's massive, but also because it's fully open source. Unlike many powerful models out there, everything you need to recreate this model, like training code, data, and instructions, has been freely released and is permissively licensed. The folks at AI2 are calling Tülü 4.5b a big step for the US in showing that America can still be a leader in building top-tier open source AI without always relying on big corporate labs. It's part of a bigger conversation about OpenAI research. You know how a lot of AI breakthroughs get locked behind closed APIs or proprietary code? Well, Tülü 4.5b wants to break that pattern. But let's talk performance. How do we measure something like this? AI2 tested it on a bunch of popular benchmarks, including PopQA, GSM-8K, and math, and more. These tests cover everything from knowledge recall and factual correctness to advanced reasoning, math word problems, coding tasks, and instruction following. And internal evaluations, Tülü 4.5b beat DeepSeek v3 and GPT 4.0 on a bunch of tasks. For instance, on an evaluation set called PopQA, which has over 14,000 knowledge questions from Wikipedia, Tülü 4.5b did better than not only those two models, but also Meta's Llama 3.1 405b version. Pretty nuts, right? Another place Tülü 3.5b shines is math tasks. On a benchmark called GSM-8K, which is all about grade school level math problems, Tülü 4.5b actually snagged the highest performance among models in its class. That's always interesting because math is, for many models, quite challenging, especially if they haven't been explicitly fine-tuned in that domain. If you want to try Tülü 4.5b out for yourself, AI2 has a chatbot web app that showcases it. They also posted code on GitHub and on Hugging Face, so if you're a developer or a researcher, everything is there. You can test it, adapt it, or even combine it with your own data. It's all free and open. Now, Tülü 4.5b didn't just show up overnight. It's part of the bigger Tülü 3 family, which AI2 released in stages. Previously, there were 8B and 70B parameter versions that were also instruction-tuned to match or even surpass some closed models. This newest 4 and 5B iteration is basically a let's push the scale as far as we can with open weights and see what happens moment. One of the biggest reasons Tülü 4.5b stands out is how it was trained. AI2 used advanced post-training approaches that combine supervised fine-tuning, preference learning, like DPO, which stands for Direct Preference Optimization, and a novel approach called reinforcement learning, with verifiable rewards, or RLVR. Essentially, RLVR gives the model tasks where the answers can be definitively checked for correctness, like math equations or certain constrained instructions. The model gets a reward if it produces the correct solution. This approach, especially at the 405B scale, seems to give Tülü 3 an extra boost in tasks that demand accurate reasoning. They also emphasized verifiable outcomes for math problem solving and instruction following. Instead of just having a random reward function, Tülü 4.5B is rewarded only when the solution is verified by a process that can be automated. That's how it manages to get better at these tasks without drifting off into weird tangents. AI2 also mentioned a few technical challenges in scaling Tülü 4.5B. Because 405B parameters is a lot, training it required 32 nodes, 256 GPUs running in parallel. They also use specialized distributed frameworks to handle the job. Another big piece was synergy with VLLM for large batch inference, letting them do parallel training and inference efficiently. This is not your typical train it on a single cluster for a weekend type of situation. It's seriously big. Comparisons are always fun. Tülü 3 405B was pitted against DeepSeek V3, GPT 4.0, Llama 3.1 405B, and Naus Hermes 3 405B. On many tests, especially MMLU for knowledge, POP, QA, and GSM 8K, Tülü 3 405B held its own, showing that open models can absolutely compete with the big proprietary ones. However, they do note that GPT 4.0 remains slightly stronger on a few tasks, with Tülü 3 405B sometimes tying or coming very close. The gap, however, is not huge. Safety was also a highlight. According to AI2, Tülü 3 405B outperformed DeepSeek V3, Llama 3.1, and Naus Hermes 3 in multiple safety tests, like refusing harmful or disallowed requests. That's huge when you consider that open source models often get flack for lacking robust content filters. But they claim Tülü 3.5B does a decent job thanks to specialized data curation and preference fine-tuning. Speaking of data curation, Tülü 3.5B's pipeline is extensive. They meticulously curated prompts and instructions from a variety of open data sets, some synthetic data, real user interactions from sets like WildChat, and existing open instruction sets like Flan v2. They also had to do big-time decontamination of their training data. They made sure the prompts for training wouldn't overlap with the test sets too much. That's always a big question. If you accidentally train on your test examples, you inflate your numbers artificially. So they took steps to ensure fairness. Then we have the multi-stage approach, supervised fine-tuning, SFT, on carefully selected data for general skill building, direct preference optimization for aligning the model's answers to certain style or correctness preferences, and RLVR for tasks with verifiable correct outcomes. Combined, that yields a pretty balanced model that can do math, reasoning, knowledge recall, coding, general chat, and handled safety constraints fairly well. An interesting takeaway is how Tülü 3 4.5B focuses on precise instruction following. The project includes tasks where the model must produce exactly 3 paragraphs, or a certain word count, or certain constraints. If it fails, it literally gets 0 reward. That's a tough scenario, but it leads to a model more likely to follow instructions to the letter. So if your team wants a model that's good at following very strict constraints, Tülü 3 4.5B might be an exciting candidate. Overall, Tülü 3 4.5B's open source stance is a big statement. It stands in contrast to open models that only give partial code or partial weights. With Tülü 3, AI2 is releasing everything: the training recipes, the preference datasets, the chat template, the final instructions, and the code for each step. So if you want to replicate these results or push them even further, you can. For those of you wondering about usage, Tülü 3 405B can be found on Hugging Face with both the code and the instructions. If you're less technical, you might want to head to AI2's web demo and talk to the Tülü 3 405B chatbot. They basically said, hey, test it while it's hot, because you never know when a new flagship model might pop up to beat it. That's the nature of AI development right now. Things move super fast. And if you're curious about the name Tülü, it refers to a hybrid camel breed between a Bactrian camel and a dromedary. They use that as a metaphor for hybrid approaches. So that's kind of cool. All in all, Tülü 3 405B feels like a significant milestone for the open source community, especially stateside. AI2 is basically showing that it's possible to keep pushing boundaries for large language models in an openly accessible manner, letting researchers and developers tinker with everything from the model code to the training steps. By surpassing DeepSeek v3 in many benchmarks, Tülü 3 405B signals a nice competition in the global AI space, bridging the gap between academic openness and top-tier performance. If you want to run your own experiments, there's never been a better time to get your hands on such a robust open model. That's it for today's breakdown. Tülü 3 405B is the talk of the AI town. It's massive, it's performing incredibly well on multiple tasks, and it's thoroughly open. xAI has just shown off its brand new model, Grok 3. According to Musk and 3 of xAI's engineers, Grok 3 is an order of magnitude better than Grok 2, which basically means it's about 10 times more powerful. xAI says they trained it in a massive data center in Memphis, Tennessee, featuring around 200,000 graphics processing units. Imagine a huge facility with rows and rows of GPUs churning through data 24/7. Some folks even call this the Colossus supercomputer, and Musk claims it's fueling Grok 3's massive potential. Now, how does Grok 3 stack up against big names like OpenAI's GPT 4.0, Google's Gemini, and DeepSeek's models? According to xAI's internal benchmarks, Grok 3 actually beats these competitors in areas like math, science, coding, and problem solving. And the company specifically cites results on tests such as AIME, which is a math competition benchmark, and GPQA, which deals with PhD level questions on physics, biology, and chemistry. For those of you who really pay attention to AI performance, xAI claims that even the smaller versions in the Grok 3 family are ranking well on Chatbot Arena, this online environment where you pit different AI models head to head and see which one does better based on real human votes. One interesting thing about Grok 3 is that it's not just a single model. There's a whole family under that umbrella. We've got Grok 3 Reasoning and Grok 3 Mini Reasoning, plus a standard Grok 3 and a mini version. The reasoning models are designed for more complex thought processes, basically chain of thought prompting that allows the AI to explain or at least internally structure its thought process before giving you an answer. But note that xAI says certain parts of Grok's reasoning are hidden to prevent distillation, which is a technique used by other developers to siphon off knowledge from an established model. So if you're hoping to rummage around in Grok's chain of thought, you might be out of luck. Anyway, what can Grok 3 actually do for you? So, it's integrated into a social media platform, X, and it's also available through a dedicated website, grok.com, and an iOS app. If you're on X's Premium Plus subscription tier, you can get immediate access to Grok 3. There's also something called Super Grok, which is a brand new tier for both the Grok mobile app and the grok.com site. Rumor has it that Super Grok might set you back around $30 a month or $300 a year, although these prices haven't been super clearly confirmed. Once you jump in, you'll see a bunch of new features. For instance, there's something called Deep Search, which is basically Grok's advanced research tool, scanning the internet, scanning data on X, and giving you these super detailed summaries. You can even narrow down your search to specific sources or websites if you want. Another neat trick is Big Brain Mode, which basically tells Grok 3 to spend more time thinking so it can give you a more comprehensive answer. That's especially helpful if you're tackling complicated science or coding questions. And as if that wasn't enough, Musk says a voice mode is on the horizon, probably within a week. That'll let you interact with Grok 3 using spoken commands and have it respond with a synthesized voice, kind of how ChatGPT or Google's systems can do nowadays.
Hey Grok, what's up?
Can you hear me? I'm so excited to finally meet you. I can't wait to chat and learn more about each other. I'll talk to you soon.
During a demo, the xAI team showed Grok 3 mapping out a hypothetical space mission from Earth to Mars, makes sense given Musk's other big venture, SpaceX, and also coding a game that was described as a cross between Tetris and Bejeweled. So if you're into game development, coding, or just messing around with an AI that can generate entire mini-apps, Grok 3 could be a blast to play with. Another demonstration had it do advanced math and science problem solving in real time, and some glimpses also showed it can produce images and handle queries about images, which puts it in the same league as the multimodal capabilities of GPT-4 or Google Gemini. Naturally, with these new features, xAI is pushing further into direct competition with OpenAI. Let's not forget the recent drama. Musk filed 2 lawsuits against OpenAI, accusing them of straying from their founding principles, and he even offered to buy their nonprofit arm for $97.4 billion. A deal that Sam Altman obviously turned down. There's definitely some tension there. And to add to that, both companies are raising huge sums of money. Word on the street says Musk is looking for $10 billion for xAI, which would push the company's valuation up to around $75 billion. Meanwhile, OpenAI might raise up to $40 billion at a valuation that could hit $300 billion. But xAI's not just competing with OpenAI. They've got eyes on Google, which has Gemini, and also on Chinese AI powerhouse DeepSeek, which recently open-sourced its R1 model. That's a big step in the AI arms race because open sourcing advanced models can let new players jump into the field more easily. Elon Musk, on the other hand, said that xAI will open source Grok 2 only once Grok 3 is mature and stable, which he thinks might be a few months from now. That might be consistent with xAI's approach of giving away the older stuff once the newer version is locked and loaded. Now, all of this might sound pretty rosy, but building these massive AI models isn't cheap. On top of having a giant GPU data center in Memphis, xAI is rumored to be finalizing a deal with Dell Technologies to get more than $5 billion worth of AI-optimized servers. Meanwhile, there's a broader push by companies like SoftBank, Oracle, MGX from Abu Dhabi, and OpenAI to pool around $100 billion and potentially up to $500 billion in order to construct more AI data centers in the US. It's basically an AI arms race, with all these corporations throwing billions of dollars into bigger and faster computing infrastructure. One of the more interesting angles to Grok 3 is its edgy approach. When Musk initially rolled out the original Grok family, he promised it would be unfiltered and capable of going into topics that other AIs avoid, maybe out of caution or because of content rules. But after a while, testers found that Grok and Grok 2 still refused certain political or controversial queries. Musk has said that's more a reflection of the dataset it was trained on, web content that has its own biases, and that xAI wants to keep pushing the model to be as politically neutral as possible. Whether that's actually the case for Grok 3 is still an open question. People will definitely be testing it to see if it's leaning left, right, or if it's truly in the middle. Now, if you're an Android user, you might be a bit bummed to hear that the dedicated Grok app is only on iOS right now. However, you can still use Grok within the main X app on Android. No official word yet on when a standalone Android Grok app will roll out, but presumably they won't leave Android folks hanging for too long. They do keep repeating that updates are happening daily, and improvements are basically ongoing. In fact, Musk stated that you might notice changes in Grok's performance within just 24 hours, which is pretty wild if you think about how fast these large language models can adapt once you feed them updated data or refine their parameters. We also shouldn't forget that business applications are a huge piece of the puzzle. Musk mentioned that in a few weeks, Grok 3 will be available through xAI's Enterprise API. That means big companies can integrate Grok's capabilities right into their own platforms. If you work in finance, coding, or any research-heavy field, that might be a game changer. Potential use cases include code generation, debugging, fraud detection, advanced data analysis, or even medical diagnostics, assuming appropriate regulatory steps are taken, of course. China just dropped another AI bombshell. After DeepSeek, this might be the biggest game changer yet. Omni-Human 1. Built by ByteDance, the company behind TikTok, this AI can take a single photo and turn it into a full-body video, complete with natural movements, gestures, and even singing. It's insanely realistic, pushing deepfake tech to a whole new level. and that comes with some serious implications. All right, so OmniHuman is basically a new approach to AI-powered video generation that can create eerily lifelike footage of people from just a single photo. And I'm not talking about just a face replacement or a bit of lip syncing. No, we're talking full body animations, gestures, movements, even singing and playing instruments, all synced up with audio. And all of this from just one image. If you're thinking, wait, this has to be some kind of black magic level AI wizardry, you're not too far off. Previous deepfake apps and tools typically need a bunch of reference images or video, or they just give you that weird, uncanny look that screams fake. OmniHuman, on the other hand, can apparently generate a really convincing deepfake using minimal input. And that, my friends, is a game changer. Now, depending on which write-up you read, ByteDance says they trained OmniHuman on a huge data set of somewhere between 18,700 and 19,000 hours of video. That's a ton of content. They're pretty hush-hush on the exact sources, but we can safely assume that with TikTok's massive content library, they aren't running short on examples of human movement or speech patterns. The paper on OmniHuman, posted to the OpenSX.arx.archive site, describes how the researchers used multiple conditioning signals, meaning text, audio, body poses, to teach the AI how humans move and talk. They call this approach omni-conditions, which basically allows them to feed the AI different inputs so it can produce videos for a wide variety of scenarios. Speaking, singing, gesturing, or even playing instruments. In some of the sample videos ByteDance released, you see a fictional Taylor Swift performance that looks unbelievably convincing, like you might do a double take to check if it's real. There's also a clip of Albert Einstein giving a lecture in crisp black and white, looking as if it was shot with modern HD cameras. At one point, Einstein says, "What would art be like without emotions? It would be empty," gesturing with his hands and everything. It's borderline spooky because it truly looks like the real Einstein is right there talking about art. Then there's a video that apparently shows a TED Talk that never took place. And in another demonstration, they show some random scenario where a person is holding a wine glass, but you can see some weird movements as if the AI is having trouble with that particular pose. So it's not perfect, but the leaps it's making beyond older deepfake methods are huge. They also mentioned that you can tweak the aspect ratio, the body proportions, and the length of the clip. So let's say you have a single image of a friend or a celebrity, you just feed that plus some speech or vocals into the model, and OmniHuman can generate an entire video with that person dancing around, doing big gestures, or delivering a speech. It's like those apps where you can animate old family photos, except taken to the next level, full-blown, near Hollywood level video illusions. But of course, while this is extremely cool technology, there is a dark side. We're living in an era where deepfakes have already begun spreading across social media. Articles reference multiple incidents around the globe. For example, on Election Day in Taiwan, there was a group with ties to the Chinese Communist Party that posted an AI-generated audio clip. It made it sound like a local politician was endorsing a pro-Chinese candidate, even though he wasn't. In Moldova, there were deepfake videos depicting President Maya Sandu resigning when she actually hadn't. And in South Africa, a deepfake of rapper Eminem endorsing an opposition party circulated around election time. So yeah, the risk for misinformation is serious, and that's just politics. Deepfakes are also getting used in financial scams where fraudsters create fake videos of celebrities pitching bogus investments. Deloitte reported that AI-generated content contributed to more than $12 billion in fraud losses in 2023, and it could reach $40 billion in the US by 2027. That's a staggering amount. So it's no surprise there have been calls for strict regulation, including an open letter signed by a bunch of AI researchers last year. Meanwhile, over 10 states in the US have enacted or proposed laws against AI-aided impersonation. California, for instance, had a law in the works that would let judges order the removal of deepfake content, or even fine the people who posted it, though that legislation has apparently stalled. A major problem is that deepfakes, especially high-quality ones, can be really tough to detect. Even though social networks and search engines claim to be implementing AI-based detection tools or labeling systems, The volume of AI-generated stuff is just exploding. One ID verification firm, Jumio, did a survey in May 2024 and found that 60% of people said they encountered a deepfake in the past year. And get this, 72% of them said they were worried about being fooled by deepfakes on a daily basis. A majority also supported new laws to rein them in. Now you might be thinking, so where does ByteDance stand on releasing Omni-Human? That's a bit up in the air. The folks at ByteDance haven't released the model publicly yet, at least not at the time these articles were written. But as we've seen in the AI community, once a new model is demoed, it's only a matter of time before someone tries to replicate or reverse engineer it. So even if ByteDance holds back, there's a good chance we'll see similar systems sprout up from other labs or from open source efforts, especially given how popular generative AI has become. On the plus side, experts mention some potentially positive applications. For instance, there's talk about using Omni-Human in education, maybe resurrecting historical figures like Marilyn Monroe or Humphrey Bogart to deliver lectures, or having virtual teaching assistants that keep students engaged. ByteDance also owns TikTok, so we could see creators using these lifelike avatars or AI-driven stand-ins so they can take a break while still pumping out content. One professor from the University of Southern California, Freddie Tran Nagar, pointed out that if someone wanted to cast deceased actors in new films, this technology might make that possible. Of course, how that would look on a giant theater screen is still unknown, but on a phone or laptop, it could be convincingly real. Meanwhile, Samantha G. Wolf, an adjunct professor at NYU's Steinhardt School, warns of the negative consequences. She highlights the idea of a fake CEO or political leader video that could cause big corporate or governmental disruptions if people actually believe it. So basically, the stakes can get pretty high. She also said, as AI starts to look more and more realistic, the likelihood of people believing a fake is going to skyrocket. And that's exactly what's causing so much concern. Let's talk a bit more about ByteDance's approach. They mentioned that traditional human animation techniques struggled to scale up as general video generation models, but Omni-Human overcame that by using omni-conditions training. This means they wasted less data by combining audio, text, and body movements all in one training pipeline. Over 18,700 hours of human video content were used to do this, so the neural network can effectively create full-body animations that move in sync with speech. That's a big leap from older methods that mainly stuck to facial or upper body animations. One of the articles even pointed out that Omni-Human can handle different aspect ratios. So you could have a portrait for a standard vertical TikTok or a wide shot that shows the person's entire body. They also mention you can adjust how much of the body is shown, controlling whether the final video is a close-up or full body. Another cool tidbit is that Omni-Human can edit existing videos. So if you have a clip of someone, you could presumably go in and change their gestures, limb movements, or maybe the expressions on their face, like a big do-overs of any recorded content. Pretty wild. Of course, there's plenty of concern over misuse. People worry about fake political ads, phony celebrity endorsements, and how quickly misinformation might spread. Some US states already have laws against AI impersonation, but there's no federal rule yet. Meanwhile, experts say we need stronger detection tools, especially before future elections. ByteDance plans to show Omni-Human at a computer vision conference soon, and they're not the only ones working on this kind of tech. Google, Meta, and Microsoft are also in the race. Still, ByteDance has a huge advantage thanks to all the data from TikTok. One joke is that if you've ever made a TikTok, you might have helped train Omni-Human. Ultimately, this AI proves how far deep fakes have come. One photo plus a clip of audio is enough to create a super realistic video of just about anyone doing anything, from speeches to guitar solos. It's exciting for creative uses, but also raises a lot of red flags. Alright, there's this 5'5", 66-pound robot with an aluminum frame. But instead of looking like a typical metal machine, it's wrapped in a soft, knitted suit. Not just any fabric, though. It's 3D printed nylon made with a high-tech Japanese Shima Seki knitting machine. so it fits seamlessly. It's quiet, about as loud as a fridge, and built to handle everyday tasks like making coffee, cleaning, vacuuming, and even doing laundry. It can even double as a mobile speaker system. Unlike the usual clunky, metallic robots with exposed joints and blinking lights, this one has a warm, friendly design that actually looks like it belongs in a home. 1X just released a short, 37-second video showcasing their new robot. In the video, you see this sweet, knit-bodied robot preparing coffee for a super happy couple. The couple is dressed in these earthy-toned outfits in an earthy-toned house, chatting and laughing together while poor Neo Gamma goes practically unnoticed. There's a part toward the end of the clip that has a total Wes Anderson vibe. The camera is outside the house. You can see the couple enjoying a glass of wine through one window, and then on the other side, there's Neo Gamma just sitting alone on the couch. The video even leaves you with a slightly sad impression. It looks like the robot desperately needs a hug, or at least some acknowledgement. And that's actually an interesting point. If you're like me, you might already be kind of attached to your little Roomba, or maybe you've named your dishwasher or something. Hey, no judgment. But with Neo Gamma's design, 1X is deliberately making us think about how we treat these future robot companions. Is it just a machine, or should we be considerate of something that communicates in almost human ways, through speech, movement, or body language? Now let's talk about the technology behind Neo Gamma. First off, Neo Gamma can move using reinforcement learning at 100 Hz. Reinforcement learning basically means it's been trained, often using motion capture data from real people, to walk like us, with a natural gait, and to swing its arms in a relaxed, human-like manner. It can squat down, stand up, sit in chairs without toppling over, and adapt to new environments. That's a huge deal because a big challenge with most humanoid robots is keeping them balanced and stable as they interact with unpredictable household objects, like the random toy left on the floor or a pet cat roaming around. And get this, 1X also trained a visual manipulation model that helps the robot pick up a variety of objects, even ones it hasn't seen before. Basically, it's using neural networks that interpret the raw data from its sensors so it can figure out how to grip something like a spoon, a cup, or maybe even a TV remote. Combine that with the fact that it's only about as loud as a typical refrigerator, thanks to upgraded hardware that's 10 decibels quieter than its predecessor, Neo Beta, and you've got a robot that seems more at home in a living room than in a factory. They've also packed in an in-house large language model, which just means it has a voice companion feature that lets you talk to it almost as naturally as you would with another person, or at least with something like ChatGPT. And it's not just about understanding commands. 1X is working on giving Neo Gamma body language too, so that it can nod, gesture, or otherwise react in more human-like ways. Apparently, the robot has these LED-lit ear rings on either side of its head that glow in real time, giving you visual feedback about its status. Maybe it's listening, maybe it's processing your question, or maybe it's politely letting you know that your request to pick up pizza from the fridge is a bit too weird. Now, in terms of design, Neo Gamma is meant to be safe around people. Instead of big metal arms, you've got these jointed actuators with soft covers, so if it brushes against you, you probably won't get bruised. The knit suit, earthy toned of course, hides all the mechanical stuff and is specifically shaped to avoid anything pointy or dangerous sticking out. This approach is super important if the robot is going to be around kids, elderly family members, or pets. 1X is basically saying they want to test the robot in real homes and gather data on how it deals with normal day-to-day life, opening doors for grandma, carefully avoiding the sleeping dog, or learning how to handle random clutter. The CEO of 1X, Bernd Bornich, has stated that the ultimate vision is a world where each of us might have a personal robot helper, much like Baymax from Big Hero 6 or Rosie from the Jetsons. But to get there, they need these robots to experience real home environments, not just controlled labs or industrial spaces, so that they learn all the little nuances of human life. They need to figure out how to handle different floor textures, varied lighting, or the random moment your toddler decides to whack the robot with a plastic hammer. In our last video, we discussed Figure, which used to be closely connected to OpenAI. Well, 1X is also backed by OpenAI. In fact, 1X acquired a Bay Area startup called Kind Humanoid earlier this year. However, 1X says that technology from Kind Humanoid isn't actually integrated into Neo Gamma just yet. It's all about building up that super intelligent, physically capable, large language model-based platform that can eventually help out at home. Some folks might recall that 1X first popped up in the news when OpenAI announced it was investing in them. This might be because so many people believe the next big leap in AI is embodied intelligence, meaning that the AI steps out of just being software on a computer screen and actually goes physical, working alongside humans in the real world. So you can imagine the potential synergy, a ChatGPT-like intelligence that can literally walk over to your stove and help you cook dinner. Right now though, it's still a work in progress, and that's something 1X doesn't hide. The new model is definitely more advanced than the old beta, but we're not exactly seeing a final, ready-to-ship product. They keep emphasizing we're close, but we're not quite at the point where you can hop on Amazon and order a Neo Gamma for your living room. Alongside the household chore aspect, another interesting feature is that Neo Gamma can double as a rolling stereo system. It has 3 speakers, one in the chest for AI voice interactions and 2 in the pelvis for bass and 360-degree effects. Plus 4 microphones around its body so it can pick up your voice from different directions. Just imagine telling your robot to follow you around playing your favorite Spotify playlist while you're tidying up the house. It's a bit surreal, but also like kind of amazing, right? Speaking of other tidbits, in one of the articles talking about the robot, there was a quick mention about BYD building the world's largest battery storage projects in Saudi Arabia, and MIT's MI-Fly system that helps drones navigate in pitch-dark indoor environments. These references were kind of placed under a more stories section. They're not directly related to the Neo Gamma robot, but they do highlight how the tech world in general is going at warp speed. Batteries, drones, AI, everything's just accelerating. Anyway, there's also some upcoming or ongoing events in the robotics community that 1X might show up at, like the Robotics Summit and Expo in Boston, April 30th to May 1st, 2025. From what I've read, there'll be names like Aaron Saunders from Boston Dynamics talking about their Atlas robot, plus discussions on safety standards and real-world deployments of humanoids in commercial settings. A big part of that conversation is going to be, how do we ensure these robots aren't going to accidentally knock over a fragile vase, or worse, harm a person? And that's exactly why 1X is focusing so heavily on making Neo Gamma safe, warm, and relatively quiet. For adoption in regular homes, it really can't be this terrifying metal skeleton zipping around your living room. One other big challenge is cost and reliability. 1X says they made a 10-fold improvement in hardware reliability over the beta version, which is a big jump. They've also managed to reduce noise by about 10 decibels, as mentioned. Reliability is crucial if you're going to trust a robot with day-to-day tasks. People might put up with the occasional glitch on their phone or laptop, but if your robot is dropping coffee cups or can't handle a doorknob properly, that's going to be a deal breaker. Then there's the question of whether or not it can handle specialized tasks, like helping the physically challenged. If an elderly person needs a door opened or groceries carried, the robot absolutely has to be safe, strong, and incredibly steady. And let's not ignore the emotional angle. The marketing video practically screams, "Hey, look at how lonely and neglected this robot seems." Which brings me back to the question, should we be more empathetic toward machines that appear human and communicate with us like humans? Historically, we haven't worried too much about how our vacuum cleaners or dishwashers feel, but the minute you give a robot a face, like Neo Gamma's simple, approachable LED-lit expression, and teach it to talk, you can't help but project some level of human feeling onto it. Maybe that's just brilliant marketing by 1X, or maybe it's the reality of how we as people will relate to humanoid robots in the near future. In any case, the goal is to get a fully autonomous, general-purpose humanoid that can seamlessly integrate into the home environment, learn from real-world experiences, and basically become a friendly, helpful member of the family, while also being aware of the safety, cost, and privacy concerns we all share. It's definitely not a trivial problem, but the folks at 1X are determined to take it on. They even mention older icons like Rosie the Robot from the Jetsons, which is basically the archetype for a home helper who does everything from cleaning to cooking. We might finally be inching toward that future. A wild turn of events. OpenAI's CEO rethinks open sourcing, unveils a new mini AI model and faces a personal lawsuit. While a $500 billion data center project looms and hush-hush moves from other tech giants stir even more chaos, the entire industry might be on the verge of a major shakeup. So, first off, the big headline: Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, did an Ask Me Anything session on Reddit and made some eyebrow-raising comments. He admitted OpenAI might have been on the wrong side of history about open sourcing its AI technology. If you've followed OpenAI since day one, you know it was initially founded as a non-profit that promised to share research openly. Over the years, though, they went more closed and proprietary, especially when they launched products like ChatGPT. Altman basically said, yeah, maybe we messed up by keeping everything private. He also gave a shout out to Meta's approach. Meta has open sourced many of its llama models and even singled out a Chinese startup, DeepSeek, that's apparently blowing everyone's minds with its own open source approach. Now, in January, almost nobody had heard of DeepSeek. Then out of nowhere, they claimed they'd built a model on par with OpenAI's GPT-0.1 for just $5.58 million, using only 2,000 NVIDIA H800 GPUs. If true, that's crazy cheap, especially when we hear that OpenAI has spent billions on infrastructure and training. Some experts are questioning these cost claims, saying maybe DeepSeek is hiding something, like possibly sidestepping US chip export restrictions or even stealing OpenAI's research. In fact, Microsoft is investigating whether DeepSeek inappropriately used OpenAI's data to speed up its own development. If it turns out DeepSeek really just copied or distilled GPT-0.1, that's going to be a massive legal headache. But even if DeepSeek did something shady, it's still making waves. The AI world is freaking out about the possibility that an upstart can challenge American giants so quickly. Microsoft, for instance, dropped $80 billion on AI infrastructure in just the last quarter of 2024, and Meta coughed up $65 billion. Both companies have said they plan to keep spending big in 2025. Meanwhile, OpenAI is reportedly looking to raise $25 to $40 billion more at valuations as high as $300 or $340 billion. Clearly, these companies believe it takes a massive pile of cash to stay ahead, but DeepSeek's claims that you don't need insane budgets to get top-tier performance are shaking that assumption to the core. When Business Insider tested DeepSeek's DeepThink setting, the system spewed out page after page of math before arriving at a final answer. Transparency some users love. In contrast, OpenAI's chain of thought models, like O1 and O3, don't show you their intermediate reasoning. Interestingly enough, Sam Altman now says OpenAI will start letting people see a more detailed thinking process, giving credit to DeepSeek's R1 for inspiring that change. Another area where Altman says OpenAI might change is in open sourcing the model weights. Right now, companies like Meta and DeepSeek release all the nuts and bolts details behind their AI, letting anyone build on top of them. OpenAI has historically been reluctant to do that. But Altman hinted that internal discussions are happening, even though not everyone at OpenAI is sold on the idea. He said it's not their top priority, but it's definitely on the table. In other news, OpenAI just launched a new mini reasoning model called O3 Mini. The idea is that it's cheaper and more efficient than their flagship models, good for tasks like science, math, and coding. You can toggle the reasoning level between low, medium, or high to handle problems of different complexity. If you're a ChatGPT Plus Team or Pro subscriber, you get it right away, and even free users can check it out via a reason setting. This launch comes hot on the heels of DeepSeek's R1 overshadowing the entire industry, so it's pretty obvious OpenAI is trying to hit back with something that's both powerful and cost-effective. Speaking of cost-effectiveness, there's also a big question of whether DeepSeek is truly original. A service called Originality AI tested DeepSeek's text outputs and found that it could detect them as AI generated with over 99% accuracy, basically as if they were ChatGPT outputs. That might suggest DeepSeek distilled or copied ChatGPT's style. Of course, that's not proof positive, but it's definitely fueling suspicions that DeepSeek's model might have been trained using unauthorized ChatGPT data. To add yet another layer of drama, Google apparently tried to sneak out an experimental update to their Gemini AI, called Gemini 2.0 Pro Experimental, then promptly deleted any mention of it. This version was supposed to handle really complex math and programming tasks, presumably to stay competitive. Right now, though, the world's fixated on DeepSeek. Google is probably doing some serious regrouping to figure out how to keep Gemini in the spotlight. Now let's shift gears in a big way. Sam Altman's massive data center project called Stargate. So apparently, Altman convinced SoftBank, Oracle, and an Abu Dhabi fund called MGX to commit to a $500 billion plan to build the largest private computing infrastructure in history. That's $500 billion, folks. The White House even held a press conference where President Donald Trump appeared with Altman, Oracle's Larry Ellison, and SoftBank's Masayoshi Son. They say the name is inspired by the 1994 sci-fi movie Stargate, where the Stargate is some all-powerful transportation device. Kind of telling, right? But a bunch of people are super skeptical that $500 billion is actually going to materialize. SoftBank has a spotty history with big, hype-fueled investments. Remember WeWork? And they're only sitting on about $30 billion in cash. MGX apparently has $100 billion, but might be tapped out, especially if they invest in other AI startups. Oracle has about $11 billion. So yeah, the math might not add up. Altman insists they'll find the money, but Elon Musk, who co-founded OpenAI before leaving in a bitter dispute, claims they don't actually have anywhere near that. The project would require building tons of data centers, each capable of sucking down power equivalent to a small city all across the country. Many question whether brute force computing is even the right path forward, especially after seeing DeepSeek's cheaper approach. Meanwhile, in the background, Sam Altman faces a personal crisis. His sister, Ann Altman, who filed a lawsuit alleging that he sexually abused her from 1997 to 2006. She's seeking $75,000 in damages, a relatively small sum for a figure as high profile as Sam. The family denied these allegations in a joint statement, and Sam hasn't publicly commented beyond that denial. Obviously, if these claims gain traction, it could be a huge problem. Not just for Sam personally, but for OpenAI's brand. It's already overshadowing some of the company's announcements in certain circles, though the mainstream AI discussion is still mostly about DeepSeek and OpenAI's rivalry. And as if that wasn't enough, OpenAI also introduced something called ChatGPT Gov, targeting government agencies that want to run AI behind their own private firewalls. It's basically ChatGPT, but isolated in Azure commercial or government cloud. So agencies don't have to worry about their data mingling with public AI training sets. That's a direct response to the fact that lots of organizations have banned ChatGPT or any generative AI for fear that sensitive data could leak out. By letting them host AI in their own secure environment, OpenAI hopes governments and big corporations might relax and adopt their tech. All of this unfolds while the major tech players are pouring more money into AI, yet DeepSeek claims it built a comparable model on a shoestring budget. Sam Altman admits open source may be the future, but he's also championing Stargate, OpenAI's massive close infrastructure project. Meanwhile, DeepSeek's open-sourced code raises questions about whether it was borrowed from OpenAI, and Google is quietly rethinking its Gemini update. Add in the sexual abuse allegations against Altman, and you have a major crossroads for AI. AI reasoning just took a massive leap forward, and the open-source world is shaking things up. A model trained on just 14% of its competitors' data is outpacing giants, while another is rewriting the rules of logical problem solving by thinking in hidden loops. If you thought cutting-edge AI was reserved for billion-dollar labs, think again, because these new models are proving that smarter design beats brute force. First, let's talk about this fascinating open-source model called OpenThinker32B. It's developed by the Open Thoughts team, and it's causing quite a stir. One of the big reasons everyone's excited is that it's fine-tuned from Alibaba's Qwen 2.5 32B Instruct. and comes packed with 32.8 billion parameters and 16,000 token context window. Now, the training approach for OpenThinker 32B is pretty interesting. The model was trained using the OpenThoughts 114K dataset, which, yes, you guessed it, has exactly 114,000 training examples. And is not just random data thrown at the model. These training examples come with super detailed metadata. Think ground truth solutions, domain-specific guidance, plus test cases for coding problems. The team even used a custom curator framework to verify code solutions, and for all those number crunching tasks, an AI-based judge was there to confirm math proofs. This helps keep the model's quality high as it learns to reason through tricky problems. Another cool thing is how they trained OpenThinker 32B. They ran it through 3 epochs, basically 3 passes over the data, using something called the Llama Factory framework. The setup included a learning rate of 1 e to the power of -5 and a cosine learning rate scheduler. Fancy jargon, but in simpler terms, it means they used a careful method to gradually adjust the model's learning speed. If you're curious about compute resources, they used AWS SageMaker with 4 nodes, each packing 8 H100 GPUs. Even so, they managed to wrap up the training in about 90 hours. They also had an unverified data set with around 137,000 samples that they ran on Italy's Leonardo supercomputer. That used up about 11,520 A100 hours in 30 hours. The verdict? Even these unverified versions performed decently, but the fully verified model still took the crown in terms of raw performance. So how does OpenThinker 32B actually stack up against other open source reasoning models out there? According to the benchmarks, it totally rocks. On the Math 500 benchmark, it scored a dazzling 90.6%. That's higher than what some big proprietary models manage. It also bagged a score of 61.6 on the GPQA Diamond benchmark, which tests its general problem-solving chops. Coding tasks show some promise too. The model hit a 68.9 on the LCBV2 benchmark, although it did get edged out by DeepSeek, another big name in this space, whose similarly sized version is at 71.2 for coding tasks. But hey, it's open source, so people can tweak and fine-tune it further, and that score might shoot up in no time. This whole open source angle is critical. A lot of big players, think OpenAI and Anthropic, prefer to keep their data and training techniques behind locked doors, which makes it tough for smaller research teams or hobbyists to reproduce or improve on their results. But with OpenThinker 32B, everything is out in the open. That means anyone can download it, study its code, look at the data, and maybe even replicate or refine the entire training process. This is one reason folks are calling it a game changer. It matches or sometimes outperforms high-profile closed models, despite using only 14% of the data that a competitor like DeepSeek needed. That's right, DeepSeek had around 800,000 training examples, while OpenThinker 32B only used 114,000. Talk about data efficiency. Now, let's compare OpenThinker 32B directly to DeepSeek R1. This model was developed by a Chinese team and is also open source in terms of the final model, but the big difference is that they haven't made their training data available. Performance-wise, OpenThinker 32B slightly surpasses R1 on the Math 500 benchmark, 90.6% versus 89.4%, and also wins on GPQA Diamond, 61.6 versus 57.6. But DeepSeek has some advantage in coding and certain math tests like AIME benchmarks, where OpenThinker doesn't quite get the top spot. Overall, though, it's very close competition, and the fact that OpenThinker uses less data, but still hangs in there, sometimes even surpassing DeepSeek, makes it a huge success for the open source community. The team says they're open to future developments, so we might see expansions to the context window or other architectural tweaks soon. And if you're on a budget or don't have a monstrous GPU to run a 32B parameter model, there's also a smaller 7B parameter variant. Obviously, it's less powerful, but it's great for those who just want to experiment without crazy hardware. Now, there's another intriguing model on the scene that we really should talk about, Hugin 3.5B. While models like OpenThinker 32B aim for powerhouse performance with significantly more parameters, Huygens 35B uses a distinct strategy to tackle the problem of AI reasoning. It was developed by an international team drawn from the Ellis Institute Tübingen, the Max Planck Institute for Intelligent Systems, the Tübingen AI Center, the University of Maryland at College Park, and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. This eclectic roster already hints at the model's broad goals and the serious research going into it. One of Huygens 3.5B's main selling points is its focus on what the researchers call latent reasoning. Instead of depending on explicit verbalizations of each intermediate reasoning step, like you might see with chain of thought methods, this model pushes most of the heavy lifting under the hood. The advantage is that you don't need to see or store those step-by-step tokens in the output. Instead, the model refines its internal states repeatedly until it's confident enough to produce a final answer. This is particularly appealing in scenarios where you're dealing with large or intricate queries, but don't want to blow through a massive context window. At the heart of Huygens 3.5B is a method known as recurrent depth. In simpler terms, this means the model loops through its hidden state multiple times during inference, effectively running multiple passes over the same internal representation. Think of it like a person quietly working out math on the back of an envelope. They keep going back over their notes, making small corrections or adding details, without having to say each step out loud. Because Huygens 3.5B doesn't generate an entire chain of intermediate tokens, it's less limited by context window restrictions. You can imagine how big a deal that is for tasks that typically require extensive step-by-step reasoning, like complex proofs or multi-step code generation. Moreover, reusing the same hidden state drastically helps with memory efficiency. Traditional chain of thought methods often rely on generating a bunch of intermediate reasoning tokens. That can get unwieldy, especially for tasks that already eat up a lot of context. Huygens 3.5D sidesteps this by iteratively polishing its internal representations. It's almost as if it's performing mini updates to the same mental scratchpad, rather than needing more tokens or a bigger context buffer every time it wants to refine its thoughts. Under the hood, Huygens 3.5D is a transformer model, no surprise there, but with a twist. Its architecture incorporates a looped processing unit that enables additional rounds of computation on the hidden states. Essentially, each iteration can be viewed as a deeper layer of logical processing, but it happens at inference time instead of requiring a bigger parameter count in the model's static design. By carefully balancing the number of these inference time iterations, Huygens 3.5D can either crank up the complexity handling for tough problems or speed through easier ones with fewer loops. Let's talk about training. Huygens 3.5D was fed a colossal 800 billion tokens drawn from various domains, including general text, code, and mathematical reasoning. This diverse and massive training corpus ensures the model can tackle everything from coding tasks to more academic question and answer sets. And what's even more interesting is the synergy between the training approach and the architecture's recurrent depth. The team behind Huygens 3.5AB intentionally pushed the model to handle tasks that stretch beyond direct memorization or single-shot reasoning. So the model had to learn how to think internally. Once trained, Huygens 3.5D was benchmarked on a variety of reasoning-heavy data sets. For example, it showed impressive results on ARC, a well-known dataset aimed at challenging AI with questions from standardized tests, and GSM-8K, a popular math reasoning benchmark. These tasks typically measure whether a model can handle multi-step logical or arithmetic processes without simply repeating memorized answers. Despite its relatively modest size of 3.5 billion parameters, Huygens 3.5B outperformed larger models like Pythia 6.9b and Pythia 12b, a notable achievement that underscores the effectiveness of recurrent depth. Another key point is how Huygens 3.5b scales its performance based on the task difficulty. For trickier problems, you can allow more iterative passes during inference, giving the model extra mental cycles to refine its solution. If a question is simpler, like a straightforward fact lookup or basic arithmetic, you can let the model run fewer loops, speeding up the entire process and using fewer computational resources. In practice, this means you can tailor Huygens 3.5D's behavior to your hardware constraints or time requirements, which is a big plus for many real-world deployments. DeepSeek is racing to drop its next AI model ahead of schedule, undercutting OpenAI by up to 40 times in cost and shaking up the entire industry. Meanwhile, Alibaba's new video AI is already outperforming OpenAI's Sora, and Western governments are starting to panic. And as OpenAI rolls out new research tools and voice features, one big question looms. Just how persuasive should AI really be? All right, first off, DeepSeek has been making headlines in a major way. If you remember, they launched their R1 model in January, and it basically caught everyone off guard. R1 was touted as a powerful AI reasoning model, and it was training at a fraction of the cost that bigger companies like OpenAI reportedly invest in their own models. Some people, including Google, were skeptical of those claims. Google even called DeepSeek's statements exaggerated, and OpenAI suspected that DeepSeek might have used distillation from ChatGPT's infrastructure. But either way, the model was out there, and big names like Microsoft added R1 to Azure AI Foundry, and GitHub, and Amazon Web Services also featured it in their model catalog. Now, the big story is that DeepSeek wants to release their successor, R2, earlier than they initially planned. They had said R2 might launch in early May, but new reports suggest they're trying to get it out even sooner. So, sadly, we don't have an exact date, but the rumor is that it could be any time before May. The upcoming R2 is supposed to have improved coding capabilities and be able to reason more effectively in languages beyond English. That's a huge deal because if you think about it, a lot of advanced language models tend to revolve around English, so having robust multi-Banget support could position DeepSeek as a serious global contender. Why is DeepSeek pushing this timeline? Well, GPT 4.5 is still weeks away, and GPT 5 might not arrive for months, so if R2 hits the market soon, DeepSeek could once again shake things up in the AI ecosystem. And they've already proven that they can undercut OpenAI by a wide margin in terms of pricing. According to analysts at Bernstein, DeepSeek's pricing can be 20 to 40 times cheaper than what OpenAI charges for comparable performance. That cost-saving aspect has drawn in not just small enterprises, but also major players wanting to integrate R1 into their offerings. Now, to really understand what makes DeepSeek tick, you need to know a bit about its founder, Liang Wenfeng. He's been described as super introverted and low-key, but he became a billionaire thanks to his quantitative hedge fund, Highflyer. The vibe is that he runs DeepSeek more like a research lab than a classic for-profit startup. He even pays employees top-tier salaries. Some senior data scientists earn 1.5 million yuan annually, when other rival quant funds usually cap around 800,000 yuan. He is also known for having a flatter corporate structure, which is pretty different from the typical Chinese tech giant model with 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. Instead, people report working normal 8-hour days in a pretty collaborative, hands-on environment. Highflyer, the hedge fund behind all this, actually poured a ton of money into AI research way before R1 made headlines. They spent around 1.5 billion yuan on 2 supercomputing AI clusters in 2020 and 2021. One of these clusters, Fireflyer 2, consists of about 10,000 NVIDIA A100 chips. This was before the US banned the export of those chips to China, so by the time that ban rolled around, Highflyer was already set. That gave them a big advantage. The key to DeepSeek's cost effectiveness is its use of techniques like mixture of experts, MOE, and multi-head latent attention, MLA. In MOE, you basically divide the model into specialized expert components so it doesn't have to tap the entire model for every single query. Meanwhile, MLA means the model can process different parts of an input simultaneously, picking out the most important details more efficiently. As a result, DeepSeek claims it can achieve performance on par with bigger, more expensive models without breaking the bank. Chinese authorities, interestingly, are fully behind DeepSeek. We're seeing municipal governments, energy companies, and big corporations like Lenovo, Baidu, and Tencent all integrate DeepSeek into their products. The government is even telling DeepSeek to keep a low profile in international media. Meanwhile, some Western governments, like South Korea and Italy, have restricted or removed DeepSeek-based apps over privacy concerns. There are also broader fears that advanced AI models could be used for social engineering or misinformation campaigns, so it's not surprising that scrutiny is intensifying in certain regions. But it's not just DeepSeek making moves. Alibaba recently announced their open source video foundation model, Wan 2.1, which is reportedly outperforming another OpenAI model called Sora on certain benchmarks. Alibaba's new offering includes multiple submodels optimized for text-to-video, image-to-video, video editing, text-to-image, and even video-to-audio. They have Wan 2.1i to V14b and Wan 2.1t to V14b, which can both generate videos at 480p and 720p, plus a smaller T2V 1.3b model that can run on consumer-grade GPUs, like an RTX 4090. According to Alibaba, Wan 2.1 can handle complicated motions and realistic physics simulations, and it's posted some excellent metrics on the VBench leaderboard. Part of the secret sauce is a novel 3D causal VAE architecture with a feature cache mechanism for speed, plus a flow matching framework within a diffusion transformer structure. In short, they threw a lot of advanced techniques into the pipeline, training on about 1.5 billion videos and 10 billion images. That's huge. On the OpenAI front, there have been a couple of big stories. First, they expanded access to their deep research tool. Originally, it was only for pro subscribers at $200 a month, and now it's open to all paid ChatGPT users plus Team Adjet Enterprise. If you have a Plus plan, you'll get 10 deep research queries each month. Pro users get a bump from 100 queries up to 120. In case you're not familiar with it, deep research is basically an in-depth tool for generating detailed, resource-intensive reports, sometimes taking 5 to 30 minutes to compile a single query. The reasoning is a bit slower, but can be more thorough, and now it also incorporates images in citations for a deeper dive. However, free ChatGPT users still don't get deep research because apparently it's super resource heavy. Another OpenAI update revolves around the topic of persuasion risks. In their recent white paper, they discussed how the deep research model might be used to persuade or influence people's beliefs. And because of that, they're holding off on launching an API version of the deep research model. They're basically reevaluating how to test for real-world persuasion, including how AI could produce extremely personalized content that sways opinions on a massive scale. They also ran tests, like seeing if the deep research model could persuade GPT 4.0 to pay money or reveal a code word. It actually outperformed some older OpenAI models at that, though it wasn't quite as persuasive at the code word scenario. Even so, OpenAI wants to tread carefully before making it widely available to outside developers. Finally, there's one more tidbit from OpenAI that's pretty cool. They're rolling out a preview of ChatGPT's advanced voice mode to free users of the platform. This feature had been exclusive to Plus subscribers for a while, using a variant of the GPT 4.0 mini model for speech. The advanced voice mode allows you to talk to ChatGPT out loud, rather than typing all your questions. It can handle more natural, real-time conversations, even letting you interrupt mid-responses to ask clarifying questions or pivot the topic. That said, there are daily usage limits and they can fluctuate. But it's still neat that more people get to test it out without paying for a premium subscription. If you want to try it, just tap the voice icon in the ChatGPT app, grant microphone access, and you're off to the races. Interestingly, Apple has also gotten involved in some sort of collaboration with OpenAI. Rumors are floating about an Apple OpenAI ChatGPT deal that might revolve around making AI voice interactions even more seamless on Apple devices. We'll have to wait for official confirmation, but it seems like there's something brewing there too. So prices are dropping, competition is heating up, and the big players are making moves that could reshape the entire landscape. OpenAI is rolling out GPT 4.5 in just weeks. Adobe's AI is generating videos, and Elon Musk claims Grok 3 is scary smart. With AI companies racing to outdo each other, things are getting wild, so let's break it all down. All right, so first up, the hype surrounding GPT 4.5 is pretty big. Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, has confirmed that GPT 4.5 is going to be released in just a few weeks. Internally, they call it Orion, and it's supposedly going to be OpenAI's last non-chain of thought model. So basically, they're trying to move away from an approach where the model just spits out results without deeply reasoning in the background. GPT 4.5, or Orion, will be the final iteration that sticks to that older system. After that, we'll be seeing GPT-5, which is the first big step for OpenAI toward full-on chain of thought, COT reasoning across all tasks. If you're wondering what chain of thought or COT means, it basically refers to the AI going through multiple steps or lines of thinking, almost like brainstorming behind the scenes to arrive at an answer. Right now, a lot of the big LLMs, or large language models, don't publicly show that hidden chain of thought. But going forward, OpenAI wants to focus on building models that really think step by step under the hood, even if they don't show you every single thought. Sam Altman has also said that GPT-5 might unify the O series and the GPT series models, so they don't have to force users to pick from a bunch of different submodels. If you've used OpenAI's API or messed around with ChatGPT, you've probably noticed there's GPT-4, GPT 3.5, some specialized O reasons, models, and so on. It can get a bit complicated. Altman basically said, we hate the model picker as much as you do, so they want a single platform that just works for everyone. That sounds like a step in the right direction because it's definitely a little confusing right now. Speaking of timelines, GPT 4.5 should arrive in a few weeks, and GPT-5 should drop in a few months. Altman hinted that when GPT-5 is available, free ChatGPT users will get unlimited chat access with what he calls a standard intelligence setting. Then there's ChatGPT Plus, which will have a higher intelligence level, and ChatGPT Pro, which will apparently unlock even more advanced capabilities. This approach makes sense. Many people expect that if you pay more, you'll get more powerful features. What's also interesting is that GPT-5, as part of that new era of chain of thought reasoning, might decide on its own when it needs to perform prolonged reasoning. One of the biggest criticisms of ChatGPT or GPT-4 is that it sometimes cuts answers short or doesn't delve deeply enough. If GPT-5 can decide on its own to think longer and refine an answer, that could be a game changer for more complex tasks. Now, there have been rumors that GPT-5 was over budget and behind schedule back in December, but apparently the plans are back on track, at least according to Sam Altman's updates on social media. The entire AI community is watching closely because GPT-5 might shape the next wave of AI applications in basically every industry you can imagine. All right, now let's talk about Adobe's Firefly video model. So Adobe just announced it's now available in public beta. This is pretty exciting if you're into creative stuff or you make videos. Firefly was originally more about images and text effects. Now it's expanding to generate short AI videos up to 5 seconds in length, 1080p resolution at 24 frames per second. They say they're working on 4K soon, which should be really cool. Being able to just type a prompt and generate a short clip could transform the way people add B-roll to projects or create entire scenes from scratch. Adobe also introduced new subscription plans specifically for Firefly. They've got Firefly Standard at $9.99 a month and Firefly Pro at $29.99 a month. The difference is in how many video or audio credits you get, basically how many AI operations you can do for generating new content. Standard gives you 2,000 video/audio credits each month, while Pro bumps you up to 7,000. And they mention that if you blow through all your credits, you can always upgrade to a higher tier or buy multiple Pro plans. They're also teasing a future premium plan that's supposed to have even more capacity. Something to keep in mind here is that even if you already have a Creative Cloud subscription, that doesn't automatically give you unlimited video generation. It sounds like you'll get a limited trial of these new features, but if you want extensive access, you'll probably need one of these Firefly plans. Adobe says they really want Firefly to be IP-friendly and commercially safe, so they've trained it on data sets that presumably avoid issues like copyright infringement. They're also working on direct integration with apps like Photoshop, Premiere Pro, and Express. Now, Elon Musk's xAI is shaking things up with its latest AI model, Grok 3. At the World Government Summit in Dubai, Musk called Grok 3 "scary smart," saying it can come up with solutions you wouldn't anticipate. According to Musk, Grok 3 uses synthetic data and a self-correcting mechanism to maintain logical consistency. This is different from how ChatGPT typically uses massive amounts of real-world data. One of the huge claims is that Grok 3 training required a whopping 200 million GPU hours on xAI's Colossus supercluster, which apparently has 100,000 NVIDIA H100 GPUs. That's insane computing power, and if Musk's numbers are accurate, it dwarfs many other AI training setups. For context, there's a Chinese model called DeepSeek V3 that took about 2.7 million GPU hours to train. So Grok 3 is in a completely different league in terms of raw computational resources. Musk also mentioned that even though they haven't done fine-tuning yet, Grok 3's base model already outperforms Grok 2 by a big margin. Another interesting twist, they plan to let the bot scrape X, the social media platform previously known as Twitter, in real time. That might give it a more direct pipeline to the latest trending data and user conversations. They're also talking about an unhinged mode, which, by xAI's own admission, can produce content that's intentionally offensive or inappropriate. It's unclear how that's going to be managed responsibly, but it sounds like they're trying to separate safer, default usage from the more edgy stuff. In terms of competition, Musk believes Grok 3 might actually beat GPT 4.5 to market, saying it could be released in about a week or two, though it's not entirely clear if that means publicly or just for a limited group. We also don't know if it'll be behind a paywall. Previously, Grok 2 had been available only to X Premium subscribers, then they made it free to all X users, and apparently there's now a standalone website as well. This push towards chain-of-thought reasoning, or reasoning AI, is a big deal. We're seeing that not just from OpenAI, but from Chinese researchers and from Musk's xAI. People want AI that can solve tough problems, think deeply, and reflect on mistakes. For instance, Musk says Grok 3 can identify incorrect information, reflect on it, and remove it if it doesn't match reality. If that's legit, it might help reduce hallucinations, which is that phenomenon where a chatbot invents details that aren't actually true. And get this, xAI is already talking about scaling their supercluster to 1 million GPUs for future versions of Grok. That's basically heading straight toward artificial general intelligence territory, at least in Musk's words. Of course, every step forward is also followed by a wave of ethical and regulatory questions, so it'll be interesting to see how governments respond as these systems become ever more powerful. Another thing to keep an eye on is how all these new models handle user privacy and data. Both Sam Altman and Elon Musk have had to deal with skepticism about how they use massive amounts of data for training. Musk is obviously letting Grok 3 pull data from X in real time, but that might raise concerns about user consent, especially if the chatbot is repurposing user tweets in its responses. Similar issues have come up for ChatGPT, which trained on huge swaths of text from the internet. All in all, the next few weeks and months are shaping up to be quite a ride for AI enthusiasts. We're on the brink of GPT 4.5 dropping, GPT-5 is on the horizon, and Adobe's Firefly is bringing generative videos into the mainstream. Robots built for war, AI pushing the limits of what's possible, and tech companies diving deeper into defense. Things are moving fast, and it's getting wild. From a humanoid war machine making its debut in a San Francisco nightclub to AI research agents that could replace hours of work in minutes, there's a lot to unpack. Kicking things off, imagine a humanoid war machine making its first public appearance not on a battlefield, but in a San Francisco nightclub. That's exactly what went down with the Phantom MK1 robot. This robot is built by a startup called Foundation Robotics Labs, headquartered in Frisco. They decided, for some reason, to introduce Phantom MK1 at the Temple nightclub during what they called the quarter-of-the-century tech gigaparty. People at the event got to see this robot on stage DJing, although from the looks of it, the robot's movements and music selection were all pre-programmed by humans behind the scenes. Now, Foundation Robotics Labs was founded in 2024 with about $11 million in seed funding. The founder, Sankait Pathak, was previously known for a fintech startup called Synapse, a banking-as-a-service platform that actually went bankrupt. before he shifted gears and poured his energy into robotics. One of his co-founders, Mike LeBlanc, is a former US Marine who also co-founded a security robotics company called Cobalt AI. Together, they're aiming to develop humanoid robots that can handle everything from manufacturing tasks to full-blown military applications. Seriously, they're not trying to hide their defense angle at all. Pathak believes advanced humanoids could be essential in future warfare, and he's been pretty vocal about the need for the US to keep pace with China's push in defense robotics. In the words of an SFGate reporter, the Phantom Mk1 is a literal war machine. But let's break down the specs so you can see if it lives up to that nickname. Phantom Mk1 is about 1.75 meters tall, around 5 feet 9 inches, and weighs roughly 80 kilograms, or 175 pounds. It can lift up to a 20 kilogram payload, which is about 44 pounds. Under the hood, it's got these advanced cycloid actuators that Foundation says combine the performance of hydraulics with the efficiency and quiet operation of electric motors. That means the Mk1 can crank out a peak torque of around 160 Newton meters, but also has a backdriving torque of under a single Newton meter. Basically, it's got both power and precision. Foundation Robotics Labs envisions this thing being used for general purpose tasks, everything from industrial operations to home service and entertainment. And yes, going to war if necessary. Phantom's upper torso is like its central command, with batteries, processors, cameras, and sensors for 360 degrees situational awareness. They're also proud of how the robot's lower torso balances and moves, letting it navigate uneven terrain, climb stairs, and handle other confined spaces. It's supposed to have a very human-like gait, so it can work in factories, offices, or even disaster areas that were originally designed for people. Interestingly, the core platform for Phantom Mk1 seems to have been built on technology acquired from Boardwalk Robotics, a small Florida company that introduced humanoid named Alex back in August 2024. Boardwalk's Alex robot relied on a stable base to do tasks that involved advanced manipulation. Now, with Phantom, you're seeing a next-level version designed with a more complex lower torso and improved mobility. Foundation definitely has ambitious plans. They say they want to ship over 40 robots in 2025, then ramp up to 10,000 in 2026, and more than 20,000 in 2027. They're targeting $1 billion in annual recurring revenue, which is nothing to sneeze at for a startup that only came into existence about a year ago. And they also dream of using those profits to build a base in Antarctica and eventually expand to the moon, Mars, and beyond. It's pretty wild, and I gotta say, it's reminiscent of the shift we've seen lately, where more and more tech companies are getting comfortable with defense applications. Even big players like Meta, OpenAI, and Google have started reversing their anti-military stances and becoming more open to defense contracts. This trend might remind you of Boston Dynamics. They worked with DARPA years ago, developing a humanoid called Petman for the US Army in 2011 to test chemical protective suits. Then there's Atlas, also originally funded by DARPA, designed for disaster response. Atlas ended up pivoting more toward industrial applications under Boston Dynamics, which is now owned by Hyundai. Russia, by the way, introduced a humanoid robot called Fedor back in 2016 that was allegedly for space missions, but could also carry firearms if needed. So it's definitely not unprecedented to see these war-oriented robots popping up. All right, switching gears to research in robotics and AI, a big collaboration between NVIDIA and Carnegie Mellon University has resulted in a framework called ASAP, short for Aligning, Simulation, and Real Physics. The idea here is that robots get trained in virtual environments where they can push their capabilities without risking a meltdown in the real world. Then ASAP steps in to account for all those pesky real-world differences that usually trip up robots when they leave the lab. It basically helps ensure that what they learned virtually lines up more closely with physical reality. The cool part is that ASAP reduces overall motion errors by about 53% compared to older methods. They tested it on a G1 humanoid robot, having it do forward jumps of more than a meter. Pretty impressive for a humanoid. Unfortunately, the team did face some hardware issues. They pushed the robot so hard that some motors overheated, damaging 2 test units. Still, the researchers are staying optimistic, saying that every shortcoming is an opportunity to refine the hardware. They've also made their code open source on GitHub so other scientists and developers can build on top of it. In another piece of news, researchers using that same G1 robot developed a new humanoid motion framework that lets the robot sit, roll around, and stabilize itself using its entire body, instead of the typical biped-only approach. The traditional humanoid control methods often have trouble dealing with random contacts, like when the robot's knee or elbow might accidentally touch the ground. But the new GPU-accelerated rigid body simulator they're using can handle those chaotic scenarios in real time. That means the robot can adapt on the fly to weird surfaces, recover from falls, and do very human-like maneuvers that older methods just couldn't handle. It's all about giving humanoids dynamic motion that's closer to what humans do naturally. Now, let's talk about another company making waves with a humanoid called Atom. The firm behind Atom is PND Robotics, spelled PNDBTI-TIX in some references. They've been showing off the robot's dexterity by having it do calligraphy and other detailed tasks that require precise motor control. Manufacturing Atom is no small feat. It takes about 37 hours in total, involving 3D modeling, CNC machining, and so on. It has 37 degrees of freedom and is powered by 20 actuators. That's how it manages all these delicate maneuvers. Atom is controlled by the PND PMC system, which orchestrates 163 CNC machine parts and nearly 400 printed components. They've used 7 different composite materials and 13 specialized manufacturing processes, all done in-house. The result is a robust humanoid that can handle fine motor tasks like assembling tools or balancing objects. Another big claim is that PND Robotics has introduced an imitation learning framework, letting Atom learn locomotion by analyzing human movement data. The payoff is more natural, agile motion, way beyond the rigid mechanical steps you might have seen in older humanoids. As you can see, the robotics world is on fire with new breakthroughs. Foundation Robotics Labs wants to solve labor shortages and push into defense, hoping the Phantom Mk1 will be the first wave of mainstream humanoids that can handle pretty much any task, even warfare. Carnegie Mellon and NVIDIA are bridging that gap between sim and reality, letting robots run wild in a virtual world and then actually replicate those skills in your warehouse or on your battlefield. PND's Atom is showing off crazy dexterity with advanced imitation learning, and on the software side, OpenAI and Google are basically trying to outdo each other in the race for the best autonomous research agent. Honestly, it's fascinating, and maybe a little scary, to imagine a future where humanoid robots walk around factories, handle fragile parts, or even defend outposts in Antarctica, all while AI agents in the background are feeding them real-time information about how to do their jobs most effectively. Whether you think that's the next logical step in our technological evolution or a path to potential dystopia, you can't deny it's happening fast. Thanks for hanging out with me on this deep dive. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button and subscribe for more updates on next-gen robots and AI breakthroughs. We've only scratched the surface on what's possible, and I can't wait to see what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.